What's up, guys? Welcome back to Right Side. Today, I wanted to bring Billy back onto the channel and go through a presidential and Senate race map. If you guys like these types of videos, be sure to let me know by commenting and liking the video. With that said, let's get into it. All right, Billy, welcome back to the channel. And why don't you kind of give everyone an idea of your background with elections and why you're here?
Yeah. So I am a political science major, and I focus my studies on studying elections and election data. So I study how campaigns are run, and how elections are conducted, and the how to predict the outcomes of
Mm.
elections and do electoral ratings and stuff like that. So I study a lot of campaign data, election data, and that's really my focus. So I become a kind of an expert on that topic. It's my focus, study of focus.
Sure. And before we get into the map, what do you think is the most important thing that goes into predicting elections or determining whether or not a campaign will be successful? Or
Well, I think candidate quality is the most important thing, because if you get a bad candidate, you're done from the start, no matter what
Mm.
happens. Look at Doug Mastriano. The second he was elected, the Republicans lost the governor's race. When you have really unelectable people, um, no matter how much money or anything that you put into a campaign, it's over from the start.
All right, without further ado, let's get into the map. So if you have a map on your end, we could pull that up and
Yes.
start. We'll start off with the presidential race, and then we'll kind of go into the Senate race after that.
So,
So.
the way we fill these out is we go by, four distinctions: safe, likely, lean, and tilt.
Mhm.
Um, so typically, states that are safe will either party will win them by 10 or more points.
Mm.
So, you think of Virginia in 2020 was a safe state because Biden won it by 10 point, I think, 1%. Um, so we classify them typically by percents.
Mhm.
So if and a majority of the states are safe states and are decided by 10, but it's
Right.
the few ones that are decided by less than 10 that we really have to look at. And of course, um, Nebraska has the second district, as they have the proportional representation.
Right.
So I think, yeah. So typically, this is the map that you'll see when discussing races that will be under 10 points. Me personally, I push Iowa, Alaska, and Ohio. I
Into the
think
safe
they'll all
category.
be decided by more than 10.
Okay.
I think when you look at the trends that have gone in those states, Ohio and Iowa have been two of the fastest moving Republican states. And Alaska, while it's trending blue, it's not trending blue fast enough. And we'll likely see a rightward shift of the national environment in 2024 than we saw in 2022.
Okay.
So it's very likely that those states stay above 10, while New Mexico is likely to be dragged under 10 because of the
Mm.
shifting environments. So,
I've seen a
when you
lot of
talk
people talk
about,
about New Mexico being like, if there was a huge rightward shift in the nation, then possibly looking at a state like New Mexico being in play. But
well, I mean, you look at the trends that are happening with Hispanics, with the environment being a lot more Republican. You certainly see a shift, but you'll never see one where it will be decided by a point.
right.
That's just not feasible. Um, but what it could say is that could come in the future. It
Right.
could be a state that could, if these trends
Couple
stay, it could
cycles.
could it could be competitive in the future. I mean, Virginia used to be a safe Republican state, and it only took a few cycles for a couple little trends to turn big, and now
Right.
it's typically classified as uh, a safe state like it was in 2020. It'll be a lot more competitive this cycle, though. Um,
Looking forward to talking about it.
so so Texas is one. Texas and Florida, um, two other likely states that should be won by Republicans and with a pretty good margin. Uh,
I, th-
Texas,
I think I
you
just
know,
saw a poll coming out of Texas that had 14 on it.
likely won't be 14, but we've seen, I think, Greg Abbott won it by about 9. Trump won it
Mm,
by about 5 in
5, 6.
2020. So you'll probably see 6, 7. There's a
Mm.
border crisis that's directly affecting Texas. Hispanics are
The
moving rightward.
the Rio Grande
Um, you
Valley.
know, any blue trend that we've seen in Texas likely isn't really going to
Stick.
materialize, at least
Yeah.
now. Florida, however, what used to be the most purple state in the nation, is the most
That's
fast
exactly right.
rightward
Yep.
trending state in the union. So there's not even much to talk about. It's not a swing state anymore,
Maybe
and
even
it's
second to
really close.
Ohio, really.
It's really close to being above 10. But abortion is on the
The
ballot.
ballot. Yep.
They've had some infrastructure problems with the hurricanes,
Hmm.
so you have to give yourself a little bit of leeway. I think marijuana's on the ballot too, and so
Is it?
so that could definitely. I think it's abortion and marijuana. That typically they go together, like they did in Ohio. I could be wrong about that, but I know abortion.
Yeah, I know abortion is as well.
That's going to be the major player. But you know, uh, if this was a 10 years ago, it could flip the state. But thankfully, rightward trends have been so strong that Trump's going to win it just fine. Um, Unfortunately, in Nebraska's second district, taking away the 269 to 269 electoral tie,
Damn.
um, the Omaha trends are disgusting for Republicans, and it's not going to get any better. There's not even much to talk about. It's more of the House race that you have to talk about because the trends are so strong. You have to ask the question of, is Don Bacon, the Republican incumbent in the Biden district, and what should be a Harris district, going to be able to continue to overperform? Um, New Hampshire. New Hampshire's a really weird state. They don't really have trends. They just kind of do what they want. Um, you know, it was decided by a razor thin margin in 2016.
Okay.
Then in 2020, it went really to the left by about 6 or 7. It's probably only going to move about 1 or 2 points. So it'll probably
Okay.
still it'll I think it'll teeter around that 4 to 5
Sure.
range, or 4 to 6. So it's really hard to put an exact classification because it's going to be so close to, I think, what the 5 point margin is.
Gotcha.
Um, but you know, Democrats, New Hampshire just doesn't like Donald Trump. There's no other way to put it.
Some TDS
Um,
in there.
so now this is where it gets a lot more interesting. Maine is another state that's just like New Hampshire, only the trends in Maine's second district look really good right now, so it could be
Hmm.
decided by about 4 points. So it's one of
Ooh.
those that would teeter, depending on which way you move the scale. So
Right.
really, it's the same thing as New Hampshire. And then we get into this.
This is where the main party is all this.
Minnesota probably going to go by about 5 points. Could, if Donald Trump has a good night, could go lower. Kamala Harris isn't doing too bad, so it's again another state 4 to 6 where it could balance the scale. Um, we're getting closer. Virginia, another one, 4 to 6. It's depending. Now, Trump lost it again by about 5 points and some change, 2016. Then he lost it by 10 in
Mm-hmm.
2020. The early voting data shows Republicans doing really well out of Virginia. Is it going to be enough to win the state? Probably not. You just don't see states that you lost by 10, a
To
point
flip it.
point three, and flip them. But
Right.
it could go about 4 to 5 points. But the good thing about this is that there's an open seat from Abigail Spanberger retiring because she plans to run for governor in 2025. And the Democrat, Eugene Vidman, is a very far left progressive who is not very liked. And this Democrat seat, if trends go right for Republicans, they could pick up a major seat in a blue district.
Mm.
Um, Now, the next state we'll go to is Nevada. And Nevada is probably Kamala Harris's best. Now, these are the seven swing states we have right here.
Right. Right.
Um, Nevada will be the best for Harris of the swing states.
Thought
That's
so.
that's the general consensus.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you're playing a really hard game of Clark County, which is Las Vegas.
Mm.
And it's really hard when you have such a big blue city with a
Right.
lot of maids, casino workers, culinary workers who are all unionized in a urban area that's surrounded by suburbs, which is moving away from Republicans. There's
Mm-hmm.
just not enough room up here in rural area or Reno area
Right.
for Republicans really to win it. But the fascinating thing is that it gets so close. Um, there's a lot of rural votes up there, but that little spot right here is going to outnumber the entire state. Um, you know, and that's the power of Clark County, and a lot of Californians have been moving to Clark County. It was one of the top destinations, I think, in
Mm.
22 and 23. Um, it's more, and I think I even read an article about begging Californians to please stop moving to Clark County. But um, so then we'll go to what is Trump's best swing state, and
Right.
there's a general consensus for that as well, and that's right next door, the neighbor,
Arizona.
Arizona. um Arizona's polling outside of the margin of error in Trump's internal polling. um no, Arizona was really an interesting state in 2020 because I think it was really an outlier election where it was just COVID. I don't think Arizona is nearly as blue as it may seem. And
Mm-hmm.
while it's definitely trending that way from, again, Californians moving into to Arizona, um, not nearly enough
Not
for
enough.
Harris to win. I think that was a one off for Biden, with COVID, mail-ins.
Okay.
It was a tough time, but Trump is polling excellent. He's doing excellent, and they're really affected by the border crisis, and they're seeing what's
Right.
happening with Kamala
Absolutely.
Harris, and they're not liking it. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is you hear stories coming out of Arizona where um where kids are being taken and um just walking home from school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a terrible thing. I mean, it's really become a problem, and Arizonians are noticing it. When children are being taken over the border and raped by gang members,
Yeah.
typically, you're not going to support the party that's allowed those open borders for that to happen, and it's really an unfortunate circumstance where I'm not being dramatic. Um, then we go to what Harris's probably second best would be, and that would be Michigan.
Mm.
Michigan's really one of those states that could teeter. Trump could easily win it. Don't get me wrong. But right now, with what data we have, um, you know, Detroit is coming in really strongly
Okay.
for Harris. Now, and that could just be a lot of people are, the trends are tough right now. The polling, Trump has just shot up in public polling, but from some sources in the Trump campaign, they're not necessarily, expecting to. They think they might win it, but they're not necessarily saying, we have to win this or we're absolutely going to.
Right.
I think Kamala. This is one of the few places where Kamala's campaign is run a little bit better than the Trump campaign, and they actually have good. They've got a very good Senate candidate, Elisa Slotkin, to help with the campaigning.
Okay.
Um, so it's one of those things where Trump very may well win it,
Okay.
but we'll make it interesting. We'll put it. We'll make it a little closer for
If
the
you had to
look.
give a a point margin for Michigan.
A point margin.
Yeah.
Well, you could say probably two.
Two. Okay.
Um, one to two, I would say. Maybe you can meet in the middle, 1.5. Um,
But it's a tight race.
it's a tight race. I This is one of those states where it looks good for both of them. Both of them have reasons to to be excited.
Okay.
Both of them have reasons to believe that they're going to win the state.
Okay. Hmm.
And then second best for Trump is going to be Georgia.
Right.
Um,
Now,
the black turnout
Do you think that
isn't
Georgia's
all
kind of the
there.
same way? Do you think that Georgia's kind of the same thing as Arizona, where maybe it may have been like a one-time thing, just a fluke in 2020?
Oh, I absolutely think it was.
Okay.
Um, and remember, uh, Biden won the state by about 0.3% with record black turnout.
Right.
The way that it's looking, Kamala Harris is not going to get record black support. So
No, she's
there
not.
alone, you can make a case to flip the state. But the numbers don't lie. The state has come back a lot. Um, you know, um, I really have no doubt Trump's going to pick it up.
Okay.
Another state that's a lot closer, but given that he's won it twice, North Carolina's going to most likely go Republican.
Okay.
Um, if he didn't lose it in 2020, I just have a hard time seeing him losing it in 2024 in a better environment. And I think that it's such a simple explanation, but it makes a lot of sense when you really think about it.
Hmm.
The polling's not much different, and he won it by over a point. This national environment's going to be a lot better for Republicans.
Hmm.
Um, and that was with COVID and the mail-in ballots. I don't think the governor's race is going to play much of a role on the presidential level.
Hmm.
I think North Carolina. I would be very shocked if it flipped. Very shocked,
Hmm.
given that he won it in 2020, which leaves now he needs to win one state. And these are going to be probably the closest two states. Um, he flipped the RCP this morning with a Rasmussen poll that came out that had him up by two.
Right.
In 2020, the polling had him down by 6.7% in Wisconsin. Right now,
Yeah.
it has him up.
Yes. Wisconsin
So there was a
has
six
been very
point
bad with polling.
Wisconsin polling miss, and
Right.
he's up. So I feel very confident with that alone that he'll probably win it. Ron Johnson won it in 2022. Um, I think Trump probably wins it in 2024.
Okay.
Pennsylvania, which is going to be the closest state, it's the new Florida. At this point, doesn't matter
Sadly.
because Trump has hit 270, and he is in this model would be elected president of the United States. Uh, Internal polling has him up about 2 to 3 points. Harris's polling has him up about 3 to 4 points.
Wow.
Trump's campaign has been better. Um, Trump has really nailed the airspace. So I think
Okay.
it's pretty effectively you could say that's going to go Republican. And again, the great thing about this is if you flip any given state on this map, he'll still be winning.
Right. He has that margin of error
So
there. Little
he's
bit of
got a
breathing
margin
room.
of error. Um, so you can say, okay, she wins Pennsylvania. As long as he picks up Wisconsin, it's fine.
So,
Any questions?
on this map, what time, when in the week do you think this will be called?
I hope it'll be called on election night.
Don't we all?
You know, it's tough with the way election laws work. Every
Right.
state has different laws when it
Right.
comes to counting. We think about the federalist system or federalism. States conduct elections, and while we have some federal standards for that, typically they get to decide how the counting goes to a very large extent, and the laws in Florida differ than the laws in Arizona. And the great part about that is Florida has three times or nearly three times the people and
Right.
counts it about 30 times as fast as Arizona because of the laws. And I
That's right.
mean,
Yeah. Florida
you,
really should be the model in how you count votes. It really should be.
they do it fast for such a large population.
They do. They
Give
do.
them credit. I mean, they're one of the biggest states, and they get it done fast. Texas is the same way. Texas has an extra 10 electorals. Think about how many you know,
Right.
that's an extra 1/4 population.
Hmm.
Um, and they get it done really fast too.
So,
I mean, I think you could see it called 2 or 3 a.m.
okay.
Although
Really?
if there's a polling miss, if there's a polling miss, like we saw in 2016, 2020, this election will be called before 11 o'clock.
Really?
Um, but
Could you
assuming that
can you
there's
map
not a
that out?
huge, well, the polling errors that we've seen historically in 2016 and 2020, I mean, you think about them. If he's up about like 1 to 2 or a half a point to 1 point, he'll likely win these states by 3 to 4 if there's a polling error, or if there's a really
Right.
large red wave. And we could probably see that this election would be called by about 11 o'clock if that was
Okay.
the case. That's if that was the case. If there's a minuscule polling error,
Right.
and it could be called by 2 or 3 a.m. And if it's really close, if it's as close as the RCPs say it will be, could be a day or two. But
Okay.
I don't think it would ever go a week. I would pray not. We might have it where it's recounts, but the state is all but known where it would go.
Okay.
Um, like Al Gore.
Right.
There's some questions
2000.
about who if it's the legal implications and the recounts, but
Hmm.
George Bush is up. But you
Right.
could see something like that, and then it would take weeks, but you'll know who's up after a day or two,
Right.
um, and who's in the
So,
driver's seat. Very, very rarely would there ever be a miscount or legal challenges that would actually flip it, uh, even if it probably should be. Um, like maybe you could argue with Al Gore in Florida.
so why don't we kind of play a little bit of fantasy politics here, and why don't you map out the best case scenario for Kamala Harris and the best case scenario for Donald Trump? let's say that Kamala has a really good night, all the stars align, she gets all the turnout she wants. What does her map look like?
Well, this is really, I think, actually a simple answer. Um, Kamala's best night would be Joe Biden's um 2020 plus maybe North Carolina. And Trump's best case scenario would be 2016 plus Nevada.
Okay.
I think no matter how good of a night he has, he won't get New Hampshire, he won't get Virginia.
Okay. And what would you say is like your dark horse candidate for this election? The state that no one you don't think anyone's really talking about as much, or people
The
don't really
state,
put that much weight
what's
in.
do you mean like what state could be really surprisingly close?
Yeah, yeah.
Maine. I think Maine could really make your head turn because of the second district, the second rural district. Obviously, when you look at this map, um, it's really divided, and it's kind of like Nevada in a way. The
Mm,
entire upper state
right,
is rural.
right,
Bottom
right,
of it
right,
is city blue,
right,
wonderland that controls the whole state.
right.
Um, the turnout in Maine's second district is looking very red at the moment, and that could have huge implications, especially with a competitive House race. This
Mm,
red district up here is held by Democrat Jared Golden,
okay.
and Republicans hope to flip that seat, and they absolutely could if Trump can get high enough turnout in Maine.
Awesome. Well, we just got through the presidential race. If you want to, I'd love to get into the Senate.
Yeah, let's do the Senate really quickly. I don't want to take up too much time, but the interesting thing about the Senate is it's not that interesting.
Oh no.
When you think about who's going to control the chambers, um, you look at this. West Virginia is going to be your first flip automatically. Um, Larry Hogan, he might get it under 10 because he's a really popular former governor in an open seat. Uh, he's not going to win. Um, Maybe in the past, but not with our current polarization.
Okay.
Um, and, again, um, we talked about bad uh, candidate quality in the beginning that makes it impossible to win a race. Carrie Lake's a prime example.
Oof.
Carrie Lake is amongst the most far right. She's tarnished her electability by running for Senate while claiming she's the governor. Um, she still thinks she won, and she's doing it. She's running for another race right after all the legal drama of that last one. Voters don't
Right.
have a good taste in their mouth. Now, the interesting thing is that Ruben Gallegos, the Democrat, is winning a lot of Trump voters.
Really?
Trump is in some polls winning 3 to 4, and he's winning by 7, 8.
Wow.
A lot of people are like, you're seeing a 10% ticket split because that's how, in a state that has a lot of independents and a
Right.
lot of ticket splitters, in a state that likes John McCain Republicans, Carrie Lake
Right.
is probably the worst candidate you can choose. And they're going to go for a far left progressive Democrat who
Right.
should be the unelectable candidate. The Democrats nominated an unelectable candidate, and Carrie Lake herself was so much worse that they're going to vote for him. And I've seen some Republican ballots where even there's too sick to vote for Gallegos, but they're certainly not voting for Lake, and they're leaving it blank.
Wow.
She is offensive to these voters. And Ruben Gallegos is a guy who left his 9 months pregnant wife and had a messy divorce. And that,
Wow.
I mean, we've seen what can happen with cheating scandals and divorce scandals like Cal Cunningham in 2020 Senate election in with Tom Tillis pulling that out because of that. He should be unelectable, but she's that unelectable. Nevada is a state with a very popular Jackie Rosen, one of the most bipartisan senators. The spending, they're blowing out Republicans. Sam Brown is a war veteran who had his entire body burned. He's a good man. He's devoted his life to pharmaceuticals for veterans outside of the VA. I could talk a lot about this race, about, both of them are highly qualified in their own ways. But there's not much to talk about because Jackie Rosen's going to win this and win it by a landslide. It's not competitive. And this is where it gets interesting. So Republicans are automatically going to flip the Senate with Jon Tester.
Right.
Trump's going to win Montana by about 20%. There's not much room for Tester to pull out a win in the current partisanship environment with all the money that's been going in, and with Tim Sheehy, who's been an excellent candidate, who's kicked his ass in 2 debates. It's a shame. The way partisanship is now, guys like him, you look at 2020, Cory Gardner, or I believe it was 2020, Cory Gardner, senator from Colorado. Very bipartisan, but it's Colorado. It's moving to left. This is Montana, moving to left. It would have been, Joe Manchin was the same. If he ran, he was going to lose.
Right.
And then we get into the Rust Belt. This is where the Senate polling is terrible. And if a Republican is polling within the margin of error in the Rust Belt, they can win. Ron Johnson in 2016 didn't lead a single poll, and he won by over 2%.
Wow.
John James was down, and you want to go to 2020? John James was down 6 points in the RCP average to Gary Peters. He lost by a little over a point. That's a 5-point miss. Right now, very tight races that are getting a lot tighter. And the thing you'll notice in all these Senate races, nobody's at 50%. And when you're not at 50%, that means somebody else can win. So with historically the way polling goes, these states could go anyway. Really, the way it should go, the way Republicans expect, is this. This is what is expected by the Republican Senate Committee.
Okay.
They expect to win Ohio, state that's going to go for Trump by about 10 points. Bernie Moreno got a lot of funding from the crypto bros recently. He's got a lot of money. Ohio typically underestimates Republicans in polling. Bernie Moreno has been chronically underpolled in the primary. He had a huge overperformance. I would be very shocked if Trump can't pull Bernie Moreno over the finish line in a state like Ohio with today's partisanship, with the vice president candidate being from the same state. PA, Wisconsin, and Michigan. The Republican candidates have all put themselves in an opportunity to win these seats. Michigan is an open seat. Lisa Slotkin's a really good Democrat. Mike Rogers is a inoffensive Republican, so it could go either way. It's an open seat. Slotkin's got the advantage. She'll probably win it, but Rogers could absolutely win it. And really, we're not going to know who's going to win this till Election Day because there's too many undecided voters who really aren't going to. If both the candidates are at 47%, we don't know who's going to win.
Right.
And it's an open seat, and both these candidates aren't that well known, so it could go anyway. But I think it's going to go for Slotkin. Hovde's done really well in recent polling, but Tammy Baldwin is a really strong Democrat, longtime incumbent. What you could see is this could be another instance of the Russ Feingold. Russ Feingold led all the polling the same way Tammy Baldwin has. Ron Johnson wins. Well, this is the same state with the same numbers. So when Democrats say Tammy Baldwin's a slam dunk, Eric Hovde very well could pull out a Ron Johnson and win the state. Pennsylvania, the state that I do the most research on. Dave McCormick is going to be spending more money in Pennsylvania than Future Forward PAC and MAGA Inc., which is Kamala Harris's and Donald Trump's advertising PACs, let alone he'll be outspending Bob Casey. Bob Casey was the strongest Democrat incumbent on this map. And Dave McCormick is probably, he's go back to electability. He is the gold standard on how one good candidate can make a race that should not be competitive. Dave McCormick has put himself in a spot where, like 2016, Pat Toomey was down 2 point something to the Democrat. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, unfortunately. And he won. And he won by a solid 2-point margin. So really, and if you look at the margins, Wisconsin and PA, two Rust Belt states that it's hard to poll. Dave McCormick and Bob Casey. Bob Casey's only at 48%. Dave McCormick may only be at 45, but he can win it if Casey's under 49, let alone under 50. And again, he's polling about where Russ Feingold polled or where Cal Cunningham polled. Cal Cunningham, every poll had Cal Cunningham winning and beating Tom Tillis in North Carolina in 2020. Tillis won by 2. Or it might have been about 1, but he still won without leading a single poll. And Dave McCormick may have not led a single poll, but neither did Tom Tillis. But he's put himself in a spot where his campaign has been run so excellently. They have so much money pouring into the state. Independents who are undecided are going to probably vote near Election Day. And until Election Day, Dave McCormick is going to outspend Bob Casey by a huge margin. It is the Senate race to watch because guys like Bob Casey just don't lose elections when they're 3-term incumbents. So if you want to go, what's the state to watch? It's Pennsylvania, because Dave McCormick very well may lose by 4 to 5, but he also could pull out one of the biggest upsets and unseat a 3-term incumbent with a popular last name.
So looking at this map, there's one state that really sticks out to me in terms of a big fat question mark, and that's Texas. You have Texas as leaning red with the senator as well known as Ted Cruz. What's going into that one?
Ted Cruz is a little bit unpopular. He can be a little bit offensive. Colin Allred, NFL player, not hugely offensive. Democrat. They put some money into it. Ted Cruz hasn't done much. It could go probably go lean, but it's not going to flip. It's not even really worth looking at. But yeah, that's really the in and out of the Senate.
Very nice. Are there kind of little things that you kind of hear in the news that kind of you think poke you the wrong way, and how some people may talk about these races? Kind of just because I know that on the presidential map you see you had Wisconsin going red and PA going red. Is that more of Trump outrunning the Senate candidates, or is that the Senate candidates underperforming Trump?
What you see is in this map, this is the map from 2018, 2012, very blue years. So what we have is a lot of longtime blue incumbents. When an incumbent gets in once, let alone 3 times, 2 or 3 times, it's hard to get them out. Bob Casey, Tammy Baldwin, Jackie Rosen, high naming recognition, high popularity. They played the game. They have the donors. They're incumbents. It's hard to unseat someone. They've been on the ballot. And then open seats, Kerry Lake, a seat that Republicans should be flipping, didn't get a good candidate. You've got the great candidates in the hardest to win seats and the bad candidates in an easy to win seat.
Right.
That's really the problem. I mean, when you look at PA and Wisconsin, I thought they would be likely D regardless of the candidate. So I think Republicans actually have put themselves in a good spot. Even though they're underrunning Trump, you're always going to have independent ticket splitters. And they're going to underrun Trump because they're popular longtime incumbents. I mean, Bob Casey's been in there for 18 years, but he's been on a PA ballot for over 30 years. He was the auditor. It was the auditor general, the treasurer. He ran for governor against Ed Rendell. That the only election he lost was the Democrat primary. Then he ran for Senate for 3 terms. He had a popular father. His father's handed him everything on a silver spoon with his last name. He's been on a Pennsylvania ballot for 30 years. He's
Right.
entrenched in Pennsylvania politics. He has his donors who give him money. People know his name. It's really hard to beat a
Fascinating.
guy like that.
No question, no question. I don't have any more questions. I find this map to be very fascinating, especially with how important the Senate is in terms of Republicans' ability to. I mean, you're talking about the power to confirm judges to the Supreme Court, to district judges. You're talking about all the things that the Senate can
Yeah,
do.
and Republicans should be easily winning it with Montana. I mean, West Virginia and Montana, 20 plus deep red states. Shouldn't be a question. Republicans are going to win. It's really about playing the game of how many, more so who's going to win the chamber.
I look forward to it. I look forward to it. Thanks, Billy. I appreciate your time at the channel. Uh,
Thank you.
you had very valuable insights. This is a lot of fun. And hopefully we can have you back on after the election to kind of talk about what happened, what
Yeah,
went down, and see if
I
the
will
map
break
is
down the corpse.
break down the course. We'll do the
I'll give you
autopsy.
the. Yeah, I was going to say I'll give you the best autopsy.
There you go.
Um, all right.
All right. So again, thank you so much, and I look forward to having you back on after the election.
Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. If you'd like to support and help the channel grow, please subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated with all my uploads. Finally, whether you agree or disagree, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I look forward to engaging with you guys in respectful and thoughtful discussions. With that said, I'll see you next video. See ya.